My name is Jabaar, and you are watching Accessibility with Jabaar. So what is this show about? We are a show about the disabled community, and many people have misconceptions about different disabilities. So we are engaging in conversations and also sharing information to benefit a more inclusive environment. Today in South Africa, we have many different disabilities with many different barriers, and many people that have become advocates to fight for the rights of the disabled, and also for the vulnerable and those that are being oppressed. Today we are showing a very special guest on our show today, Macfarlane, and she's quite a strong advocate with many skills. She's done poetry, she's done many things, she can surf, so a lot of skills. And so today we are sharing more about her and who she is. So let's take a quick look at the clip.
I've often asked myself, if I could choose to have not been born with this, will I have chosen to not be born with this? It's a question I can't answer fully, because if you take one thing away, then you're a different person. It's a hard one because, of course, you want your sight back. But there are so many things that I wouldn't have experienced or wouldn't have even tried if I wasn't losing my sight. When I went for my first visual field test, I already knew I had retinitis pigmentosa. I didn't know how bad it was, and I assumed I had about 80 degrees of my vision left. So it was a real shock to me to find out I actually had 40 degrees left. At the moment, I have 7 degrees left. I just remember going home and crying my eyes out because I realized this was the start of the deterioration, and I didn't know how fast it would go. You know you're on the road towards blindness. For a short while, it made me feel less. One of my children was doing it. I was so sad because, I was watching her from the side and just really jealous, thinking this is something I'd so love to do, but it was really something that I thought would be impossible. I actually Googled disability and surfing, and that's when I came up with the Roxy Davis Foundation. And it really just started off with doing a couple of clinics, which was so much fun, and you felt so safe. Everyone cheered me on, and I actually asked Roxy right then if she thought it would be a possibility for me to compete eventually. I thought it would be a hard no, and she just said, if someone asks me, I'll always say yes. My surf competition is literally weeks away. I started surfing in 2019, and then of course 2020 there was no surfing. So this is the least amount of time I've managed to train for anything. If I don't do it now, I don't know when there'll be another chance as well, because of lockdown and COVID and everything. You don't know if the beaches are going to be closed again. I don't know when I'll get another chance. When I'm on the surfboard and I've actually managed to stay on the surfboard, it feels like nothing else in the world. Even though I can't actually see, it's like all of my senses are alive. And you've just got this power pushing you forward, and it's just incredible. In that moment, I'm not a person with a disability. I'm someone who is just riding a wave like everybody else. I think I'll feel that even when I go completely blind.
Wow, that video is amazing. I'm not sure what I could say. I think it's quite remarkable to see that someone with a visual impairment is able to do something like this. I'm quite speechless. So let's ask Michelle more about that and where her love for that came from. I think it's quite important for us to know. Michelle, how did you do that?
So surfing is something I never thought I could do. And then my youngest daughter, Emmy, started surfing, and I would just watch her longingly from the beach, and I didn't think it was something that was possible for me. And then I just, on the off chance, I Googled surfing, disability, Cape Town, and up popped the Roxy Davis Foundation, and they do monthly, and they're trying to do fortnightly as well, surfing clinics for anybody with any disability for free. So it's very worthwhile knowing about, because their purpose is to make the sea accessible for anyone, no matter what their circumstances.
Wow, Michelle. I'm sure that many people watching today are quite excited or want to know more about that. So when you surf, do you feel, when you first began to surf, did you feel like motivated, or did you just feel like you're going to try it out and see how it goes, or were you just demotivated? Or
No. The first time I surfed, I just they're so safety conscious, for everybody. So and we rely on our volunteers as well. So you had 3 volunteers on either side, and then the head coach who kind of surfs behind you. So I knew I was going to be 100% safe, and I managed to stand up on the board. And I just remember everyone cheering me, like I was an absolute superstar, because they do that to all the surfers, as they whether you're lying prone or sitting or kneeling, they just cheer you on. And I just felt like such gratitude to the volunteers, to the Roxy Davis Foundation, to all of it. And as I did that, I thought I found my new challenge, because I set myself regular challenges to raise awareness. And then I thought, as I thought that, I thought, like, I've never surfed before. Is it really valid? Is it really possible to start competing at my age? So I approached Roxy Davis, who is a legendary surfer in her own right and runs the group. And I said to her, would it be possible ever for me to compete?
So Michelle, I'm going to stop you there, because we're going to have a quick ad break, and we'll continue with you after that. We are back from our quick ad break, and we're still continuing our engagement with Michelle, who is a very strong advocate in South Africa. Michelle, can you tell us any experience that you've had as a woman, as a strong woman? What challenges have you faced in your lifetime? Anything you can share with us, and things, a message that you want people to be more aware of?
Okay, so I have retinitis pigmentosa. That's a genetically inherited eye disease where you start losing your peripheral vision. So currently, I only have a small amount of central vision left. So my biggest challenge is walking around public spaces. If I'm here, I feel fine. I don't have to walk around. I walk into things. I can trip over people. So a few years ago, I started using a cane. But it's very, the biggest difficulty that people have who are visually impaired is how you're viewed by others. And it's something that everybody says, and it's why people often stay at home. And my advocacy is to try get people to get out and about and use their canes and to educate the public. And I think that what we hear so often, and I have this, I can't even tell you how often I have it, and it's the biggest complaint of people who are visually impaired is, but you don't look blind. And you have your dignity challenged all the time when people say, you just looked at me, I saw you smile. They think you're trying to trick them. Or you take out your phone, and you just have to brace yourself every time you go into public. It's not the potential dangers you might be in, because if I have a cane, I feel pretty safe, but it's the attitudes of people that is the most challenging and the most upsetting. And even when you explain to them sometimes, they still fail to understand. And sometimes it's the sheer impatience of people in shopping places, in public spaces. I've had a couple of experiences, and I've had experiences shared with me that are very similar by other people who are visually impaired. I was in a shop once, and I was just standing looking at some stuff, and I had my cane, I even had my badge, and a guy was trying to walk past me, and he said, can you just move it, in a very angry way. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. And he was like, but you're looking at me now, So that was one experience. And then very recently I had a very similar experience where I was pushing a shopping trolley. I was disinfecting and everything, and I, put my cane in the bottom of the basket because you can't push a trolley and use a cane. And I just heard a voice behind me say, if the stupid woman hurries up, we might all get past and get on with our shopping. So I turned around and to scan who was, to see, did I upset someone? And the guy was looking above his mask and looked at me to make sure that I knew, and gave me an angry, and I followed. I just said, look, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. So I followed him as much as I could, caught up with him, and I said, look, I didn't mean to upset you. I'm visually impaired. And he just went, oh, please, just get lost. And he went like that, And I was so tempted, I was so upset. I was tempted to do what I did the time before, where I just walked out, I wanted to walk out the shop and just go have a cry somewhere. And I just thought, no, I'm not going to do this. So I caught up with him again and I said, look, it's not okay to be that rude to someone. I did not see you, and you have very bad manners. And then he shouted at me to fuck off. So it was so aggressive, his manner, that I just thought, I no longer feel safe in the store. I was shaking. My hands were actually shaking. My whole body was shaking. So again, I thought, I'm not going to leave it. My advocacy kicked in, like the whole thing of what I've heard from other people, what I've been through, because you can have all the bells and whistles, you can have wheelchair ramps, you can have braille signs and everything, but if people's attitudes aren't right, then you don't have an accessible society and a public. So I went to straight to the security and I said, look, there's a man in here and he was very rude and I need him to be out the store. I actually need you to ask him to leave. I told him that he told me to, I don't know if I'm even allowed to say the word on air, but what I said, off. And he said, okay, absolutely. He went to the gent, he said, excuse me, sir, this woman said that you were very rude. And he said, oh, please, just get on with your work. Just get lost. Just go do your job. So also, just very rude to the man. So he went, got the manager. The manager said, okay, I'll speak to him. It took a very long time. It's a small store. And finally caught up with him as he was at checkout and said to him, if you come back again and you're rude to someone again, you'll be blocked. And then my outrage kicked in because they were about to let him go pay. And I just said, you haven't taken his name. You won't recognize him if he comes in again. Like, there's no accountability. Like, how will you even... So I was just like, nothing has actually been done. That comment meant nothing. And he dismissed the guy. He was just like, oh, please, just like, let me get on with my shopping. So by the time he got to the checkout, I went and stood in front of his trolley, which, anyway. And I said, you can't just leave this. This man's going to walk out here scot-free. And, I want to be able to know that if something like this happens again, I'm safe. So I took out 2 items of his shopping and just said, can you just wait? Because they hadn't taken his name or anything. And the guy just lunged at me, grabbed me by the shoulders, grabbed me by the arms. And I put my hands up in the air immediately because I didn't want it to look like we're having a fight. And I said, I'm not touching him. Are you going to do anything? Because now I'm being manhandled. He shook me by the shoulders and then shoved me out the way. And he was allowed to complete his shopping. And at that point, I lost it. I started crying. I was shouting at the manager. I was like, I can't believe you're letting him finish his transaction. He has just physically assaulted me. Assault is when someone grabs you. And the manager said, well, he was nearly finished his shop anyway. And I'm like, there's no consequence. That was the problem. No consequence. So anyway, long story short, I've written to the top owners, the CEO and everything of the major store, and they've said that I provoked him. So there we go.
Michelle, what do you feel needs to be done with situations like this?
Quite simply, there needs to be no tolerance towards any kind of aggression in stores, whether it's verbal assault or physical assault. It needs to be dealt with zero policy, regardless of if someone has a disability or not. I think there just needs to be, so that everybody feels protected.
Wow, Michelle, the story is quite an impact. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure that your message and the message you've shared today with our viewers is valuable. So thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
We are going to a break and we'll be back after that. We are back from our quick ad break and we still continue our discussion about women's rights. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Candice Morgan. She is from Johannesburg. She is former Deaf World 2004 and former Miss Deaf South Africa also from 2004 and a former TV presenter as well. She's obtained many awards internationally and nationally. Welcome Candice, welcome to Accessibility with Jabaar. Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm very honored to be a part of your show. Thank you, Candice. So, looking at your profile and your history and your upbringing, I think you've achieved quite a lot and you've shown that you're quite a strong advocate for women. How did you start to do that? Can you share that with us? Yes, thank you. That's a very, very good question. Previously, I was in the TV industry and on a TV program. And I traveled a lot during that time, meeting different children, different people, going into deaf schools, going to different other schools. And what I learned from that and what I saw from that is that deaf children need a leader. They need a leader who can be there to be a role model because many deaf kids don't have that. Or they want to better their education and they just want to make their lives better. So that touched me a lot. So through my experience of traveling as a TV presenter, I then decided that I wanted to study as well. I wanted to study politics, political science specifically, to help gain more knowledge and share my knowledge with the deaf community that the kids don't know today, and how they can advocate and how they can obtain education, things like that. And so I realized that is important because that information is needed. And what is also important is somebody that can stand up and advocate for rights and become a leader. That's where the advocacy work can then begin. But if you are shy and you don't speak up for yourself, you're not able to advocate. You need to know how to advocate and also be wise and have the knowledge and have the experience as well as the expertise. And also what is important for me is that if somebody comes to me and they ask me something, I need to be prepared to engage in conversation about that. I can't just say I'm doing advocacy work, but I don't have the knowledge of what I'm doing. So it's very important that the knowledge is needed and you also need to be stern in what you want to advocate for. Wow, Candice, I think that knowledge is very valuable and extremely important. As you mentioned, you studied political science, and I think that's a very, very big task and it definitely adds to your expertise. Why did you decide on political studies specifically? Where does that fit in? Do you want to advocate in government? Do you want to become president one day? Or what is the reason behind that? The reason behind that is because deaf people have many stereotypes. People don't know that. I won't go into that now. But the reason why I also decided on political science is that when I'm speaking on behalf of the deaf community, I don't want to look as if I don't have knowledge or I don't understand what I need to understand. So political science is a way that I have built up my expertise. So if you know the right tools and you know the right people, you can advocate and make changes in many lives for the deaf children. It's not about us deaf adults anymore. You need to think about the future. And that is very important. So their future is quite important. So if you can open doors for those kids, that is something really important. And so for me, I found that political science helps me do that. Wow, that definitely gives me a clear understanding of why you decided to do that. To be a woman advocate, can you tell us what does that mean to you specifically for disability? I think it's quite difficult to answer that because there are a lot of things that I can say. Depending on the age, depending on the disability, it's quite difficult. For me, it's valuable that you need to be proud of yourself. And when you advocate, you need to advocate for your community. And when you advocate and you do advocacy work, you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it to better your community. And many people have awarded me, yes, but I'm not being awarded for myself. I'm being awarded for the community and the deaf community that I serve. You want to make sure that the deaf community also has the same opportunities as the hearing community. But the reason why we also advocate more for disabilities is because they have more struggles than the hearing community has. And reward also becomes much more sweeter if the work is harder. And that is what it means to me to be a disability advocate. Wow, Candace, I think your message really is quite powerful. I also wanted to ask you what message you have, but I think what you've mentioned already is quite valuable. So Candace, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us on Accessibility with Jabaar. You've shared quite valuable information and it's really good to have such a good advocate. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jabaar. Just remember that dreams can be achieved if you motivate yourself, and that's quite important. And also work hard. Thank you so much. Thank you. So now we're going to have more information about deaf women's rights or disability rights and how you can become an advocate. That information will be listed below. And everyone that we've interviewed today, the information will also be shared. So now we've come to the end of the show. Thank you so much for watching Accessibility with Jabaar. Bye.